Good evening, everyone. This is the regular meeting of the Bronxville Board of Trustees for May 8th, 2023. And we open our meeting with a presentation by our Eastchester Volunteer Ambulance Corps, EVAC, and Max Goldberg is here. And would you introduce yourself, your role, and give us an update on what's going on?
Of course, Mayor. Thank you for having me. My name is Max Goldberg. I'm Deputy Chief of Eastchester Volunteer Ambulance Corps. We are the 911 EMS agency that serves Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. We are the sole 911 provider, and that is something that we remain very proud of. As I'd like to remind our citizens and our general community, we are a non-for-profit organization that heavily relies on donations as well as medical billing in order to operate and provide the best possible 911 emergency medical care. When I started, just as a general idea, when I started 17 years ago, we were running 1,800 calls a year. Now we're on track for 3,600 calls this year, so we've seen a massive uptick. With a massive uptick, we've had to expand our fleet. We now operate 4 ambulances and 3 SUVs to ensure quick response times to our community at large. And in doing so, we remain to be one of the most responsive EMS agencies in the county with a 97.6% response rate, meaning 97.6% of the time we do not need additional resources into the community to service a 911 call. That's far and above other agencies in the area, and our response time still remains to be top in the county. This is a blessing that we all get to have and will continue to have, and it's my job as well as my fellow officers in the agency to ensure that we continue for years to come. With that in mind, I'd like to remind our community members that we rely heavily on those donations as we are not a part of the general tax district and do not have a line item. As far as staffing is concerned, we still remain to be one of the unique agencies in the county. We are a combination department. What that means is we have paid paramedics and spliced in paid EMTs into our staffing. However, we're predominantly volunteer. For a little frame of reference, we operate 4 ambulances. We have enough paid staffing for 1 ambulance. The other 3 are staffed in a volunteer capacity with volunteers that turn out of our headquarters. You can see other agencies in other parts of America, they respond from home, go to headquarters, get an ambulance, and go to service you at your home. We already have volunteers that are dedicated to serving our community in uniform at headquarters, ready to answer the call at the drop of a hat. Something we're very proud of, and we look to continue through the help of Eastchester, Bronxville, and Tuckahoe. If you guys have any questions, I'm always glad to answer them. Otherwise, if people at home have questions, they can always go to www.eastchesterems.com to learn more about us or to donate.
Well, I think the most important thing, and when I first moved here, I didn't understand it, that folks think your budget is either under the umbrella of our police department or the Eastchester Fire District, and it's under neither. So that solicitation letter you sent out, I think I got it last week perhaps, that's with some medical reimbursement, that's your sole source of funding. So when folks like us need you to come to the house, we need.
It's a common misconception, but it's an understandable one.
Yeah.
Around the country, a lot of people have their EMS under fire or PD.
Right.
Here we are unique, but that's what makes this community great. We're unique and we do things a different way. But that means when people get that solicitation letter, that is our source of funding, and it's crucial that we receive funding in order to maintain operation. And as you guys know, medical insurance, you're not always going to get 100% recovery.
Right.
If you get half, that's a good day. So it's always something to keep in mind. We don't like to take services for granted in the community, and right now, sometimes it feels that way, just because, just misconceptions. There's no malintent, it's just not knowing how we operate. But thank you to you, Mayor, for
Yeah,
highlighting
because
this.
that was interesting to me in the beginning.
Yeah.
How many volunteers do you have?
So we have a roster of 150. In the volunteer capacity, you volunteer your time, so some are more dedicated than others. We have about 85 very consistent volunteers
And those are as EMTs or paramedics?
as EMTs. EMTs are drivers. Good point to plug. If you want to volunteer and you don't have EMS experience, we do train you. There's a lot of community members that come in saying, hey, I want to do something a little different in addition to my normal form of employment. They come into Eastchester EMS or Eastchester Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and we train them how to be a provider.
Kit. On Arbor Day, April 28th, again, the Green Committee with Mr. Palmer, Trustee Behrens, myself, we planted on Beech Tree Lane, we had to plant a native linden tree because we're still looking for a beech tree that is resistant to the new beech leaf disease that killed the beautiful and venerable tree on that street. But we're going to get one so that Beech Tree Lane remains so named. Giving Garden is literally sprouting. We've already had school groups visit to learn about planting and sustainability. On May 13th, this Saturday, the farmers market opens. We'll be open every Saturday from 8:30 to 1 down at the Maltby lot. And then May 29th is our 101st annual parade. And our grand marshal this year is our incredible employee, Rich King, who is an incredible decorated veteran, very humble. He was a ranger, just an extraordinary record. So we're going to honor one of our own who served the country. I know our next board meeting, I just wanted to get in, the sidewalk sale is going to be June 2nd and 3rd, and that will be before our next board meeting. So please come out, you get great bargains, and it does help our merchants. And our senior citizen free parking space or raffle starts this Friday through June 3rd. And we have made changes to it that make it quite popular, that instead of getting a fixed space, you get a placard so that you can have free parking anywhere in the village, except Jim Palmer's spot, I guess, all year. And just some nice news to end. I think it was Westchester Magazine selected a group of county residents under 35, I think there were maybe 20, who they chose as they called their wonder kids, people making a difference even at a young age. And 2 were chosen who have connections to the village. Our own employee and assistant court clerk, Yesenia Tova, who is extremely active in her home city of Yonkers. She's actually on the planning board, but also initiated a self-defense course at the Y, and just is a great community partner. And then our county legislator, James Nolan, was selected for all he has done in Lower Westchester, including his foundation on the prevention of gun violence. So just congratulations to 2 younger people in the community making a difference. And that's my report. Mr. Palmer.
Just a couple items. First, just a reminder, I don't think you said this, that school budget vote and board members are up for election, and the election and the budget vote is next Tuesday the 16th, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Via the Meadow side entrance for the middle school, but very important that everyone go back and go out and vote on the budget, since the school budget levy is 4 times that of the village levy at 46.5 million. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware of that. Mayor, you mentioned about stormwater. This time of year, annually, I report on our stormwater activities, since the village does operate under a special permit to discharge to the Bronx River, a stormwater to the Bronx River. So, like all municipalities in New York State, we have to comply with what's called an MS4 permit, which is a municipal separate storm sewer permit. And we also post this information on the website. But to remind everyone, that MS4 permit has 6 minimum measures which the village must comply with. And the first 2 have to do with public education and outreach, which we can never do enough of. And Steve and I actually have a conference call with the Department of Environmental Conservation next week to go over our activities over the course of the past year. But those first 2 components relate to education and outreach, and making sure the community is aware of our stormwater needs, our stormwater infrastructure. We often talk about our catch basins, making sure residents don't put their leaves over the catch basins, but put them to the edge of the curb. We've participated in many campaigns, everything from Westchester County's program, where the county actually received a $250,000 grant some 10 years ago to begin a campaign to emphasize eliminating dog waste from roads and catch basins, since all those end up in our waterways. And in the case of the village, most of the water drains to the Bronx River, and a small portion of it on the east side of the village drains into the town of Eastchester and eventually makes its way to the Hutchinson River. But many campaigns that continue. We have in the code many sections that address violations for what not to put out in the roadway that can eventually make its way to the water. So we'll continue to emphasize that. But we did have a lot of achievements this year, including, not the least of which included getting our bronze status as a climate-smart community, and that in of itself encompasses a lot of green initiatives, thanks to the efforts the Green Committee in keeping us in the village on task, because all those absolutely do relate to stormwater. Everything from, again, encouraging residents to mulch their leaves on the property, use organic pesticides, not let detergents from your car washing make it down to the storm drains. That's all part of the public education realm. Even our recognition as a Tree City USA once again, and trying to promote tree plantings. These are all things that help reduce erosion. So it's part of that education piece of our MS4. The next item under our permit out of our 6 minimum measures is illicit discharge and detection and elimination. And you started to mention that the building department knows when they go in to inspect properties and go into basements to look for any sub pumps that might be tied into the sanitary sewer. To connect a sub pump for water and to put it into the sanitary sewer system is absolutely a violation of the village code, the county code, the state code, and what it does is absolutely overwhelm the village's sanitary sewer system, which eventually makes its way to the county system and overwhelms the county treatment plants, and will eventually make its way to either, as we said, into the Bronx River, or make its way eventually to the Hutchinson River. So things of that nature, we look forward to make sure those connections are there. What's another illicit discharge? Someone who's discharging water directly out into the public roadway. So we enforce those notices. We try to work with homeowners to come up with alternatives. Something that comes up occasionally is, can someone discharge pool water? If the parts per million of chlorine is a minimum amount as defined in our code, then yes, with the village's permission, someone can discharge that water. But even that can become problematic because of our limited number of catch basins. And when someone does start to discharge your pool water and it runs all the way down through several blocks, they start to get calls. The next minimum measure, number 4, is construction site runoff. This is another important aspect of, again, making sure that we don't have sediment, dirt, debris from a construction site running down the road. So the village does, and the building department enforces the proper mechanisms like construction pads exiting a site so trucks don't pull debris out into the roadway, the appropriate silt fencing around a construction site, very important. Post-construction management, we call it. We started talking about this in our work session. The village has made a lot of efforts to recognize the severity of these rain events. The rain event from Friday evening, the 28th, through Sunday, the 30th, resulted in 5 inches of rain over that period. Still looking at obviously there were heightened periods during that, but over the course from Friday evening approximately 7 o'clock through Sunday evening at 7 o'clock, we had 5 inches of rain, and that's a significant event. But the point that I wanted to make is the board did make efforts several years ago to make several changes to our zoning code, including requiring that single-family developments with the floor area ratio greater than 30% go before the planning board. We also increased our open space requirement for some of the residential, for all the residential zones, varying degrees. In some cases, our open space requirement went from 50% of the lot to 60%. These are significant changes. Why? Because obviously increased development coverage is going to result in increased runoff. We have additional levels of engineering review of the stormwater systems that property owners put on. So anyway, the state considers those as post-construction management items. And again, I'll itemize all these, sharing with you so we can get these on the website, because I did realize, obviously, with this recent rain event again, is that many of the community are not familiar with number of catch basins, our conveyance system, where the water flows. The last item within our minimum measures is our municipal operations, and this goes into items that the village DPW directly controls, and that is our street sweeping. We have a street sweeper. We're always out sweeping, at least on a Monday and Friday. We're picking the silt off the roadway, cigarette butts, any of that debris. We also have a truck washing bay now in our new state-of-the-art DPW, so we're not washing the salt of our own trucks. We have a salt separator out at the DPW yard, so the salt isn't making its way directly into the Bronx River. Those are the kind of initiatives on that piece. So again, this is our MS4 report. Wanted to announce that we will put that on our website. We do it each and every year, and Steve and I will be having a meeting with the DEC. Pumps on from floats to transducers. They were operational throughout the entire period over the weekend, and I appreciate that the school also always has that additional level of redundancy, but I can tell you I was getting the alarms all weekend telling me that the pumps were on and working, and that was terrific. The water damage that the school did have was as a result of a toilet backing up because they didn't have a backflow prevention device on their toilets, and this is something that you started to mention, that we do need to get a reminder out to residents that if someone has a toilet that in their basement, finished basement, shower or toilet, sits below the village's sanitary sewer line, then yes, it's in their best interest to have a backflow device on the exterior of the residence and or also one on the interior of the residence. So essentially, wastewater can make its way out, but the flap will stop surcharges from coming back into their line. So that's important.
Can that be part of the code, or is that just a recommendation right now?
We recommend it, but you know what? There is actually a section of the state code, that plumbing code, that does give a specific requirement, and it talks about elevations where someone's toilet is relative to. So I hesitate to say everyone who has a toilet below the line should have a backflow device, but it's certainly something that we encourage someone to look at, and we are going to put even some examples of the devices that people can get. There are property owners who also have alarms on them, and they go off, and they absolutely have
Will
been
you put those on the
helpful.
website, you said?
Absolutely, yes, yes.
But we could theoretically make it a requirement.
We absolutely, yes, that's true. We could consider that
Yeah, that's where you
as a
go.
future code requirement. So we talked about the Midland Valley Drainage Basin. Again, all different quadrants in the village, as the mayor mentioned. We're working with the town of Eastchester, and we'll give an update on that whole corridor in the coming weeks. But the town has been successful to date. I think it's safe to say that they've already received preliminary approval for a FEMA application to make some improvements which will be beneficial to our residents in those areas. And again, on the east side of the village, that area those are absolutely, there are some very low-lying areas there that are the lowest level in that area, and the water will sit. And I was trying to explain even to a resident yesterday that there is a catch basin down there at the end of Old Lane that is always going to have water in it. The only way that water is going to go out is when the conveyance system is filled enough to push it out. It's just a very low spot, and of course everyone knows the Midland Valley Drainage Basin is exceptionally low. But yes, Hamilton and Sussex area did suffer some had a significant runoff. And that intersection and catch basins were absolutely overwhelmed, and we did have the contractor, Cook Contracting in, who's also under contract with the village, to televise all those lines, and we will be making, following that, in a review with the engineer and some additional analysis, we'll be making some recommendations and meet with the neighborhood. But first and foremost, we wanted to make sure that all those pipes were clear, but clearly that's a problem area. The good news is that...
Sorry, Jim, so that's still going on,
Yeah.
or have they?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, this is, yes. And, and again, so I guess when I was saying, at least since I've been here, sanitary sewer system, truth be told, I think we have 6 phases that are out there. We've extended phase 3, and what are the phases? Well, we started out by cleaning all the sanitary sewer lines, then we went to televising all the lines, and then determine what lines would be good candidates for lining, what sections of pipe would be good for replacing. In other words, joints were perhaps too offset, or the clay pipes were too cracked that need to be replaced. So we've gone through that, and we've been doing a lot of lining in the village, and of course, we just need to continue to do more of it. And
Can you explain to the residents that we don't have a lock system? Because I think some people at Sussex and Hamilton on the sewer.
yes, there's absolutely, there's no lock system. The water's...
Could you repeat what the assertion has been, and then it's not what the assertion is?
Yes, that the village has the potential to control stormwater flow out of the village. We cannot. Now, mind you, most of the village systems are all gravity. And what does that mean? Your water goes in a stormwater pipe, and it's going to go for the path, well, what was ever designed many, many years ago. So yes, but it's all going to flow downhill. And as we just said, it's either going to flow on the east side of the village through pipes that work its way to the lowest point there, which is right on the town border by Alfredo Field, AKA Dog Park. There, work its way under Siwanoy and out through those conveyance pipes. No control of flap gates or any kind of flow. On this side of the village, it's all going to make its way down to Laurel Brook or straight into Scout Field. We do have flap valves on our principal outfall right here at Scout Field, our 72-inch line, but that's to prohibit water from the river backing up.
Into it.
Right. When the river is 10 feet high and 10 feet higher than all these areas, hence why obviously Willowfield Court, all that water continued to flood those areas because the Bronx River was much higher. So what we are trying to do is relook at the 2 flap gates that we have and see if perhaps an aluminum plate might be, check valve might be better. And of course, as you know, you retained the engineer last week to work with Westchester County to make some improvements to that bank and to remove some of the sediment where those two outfalls are, because it is a concern that the county, back in 2012, built a series of weirs and an estuary, if you will, which looks lovely, but is not helping our water drain out of our pipes. But so that's the gravity system. The only thing that the village can control is the use of that force main system that was put in on the school campus. And again, we've set that system up to have those transducers and floats as low as possible, so those pumps kick on as soon as that 72-inch line starts to fill up with water. That's the point. And really, we have learned a lot from it, because initially when that system was first designed, everyone was concerned about the impact of the noise. And I reviewed all the minutes and notes on that and how much louder does it sound from a lawnmower. But what we've all realized is when it comes to whether or not it's going to be a little bit of noise versus stopping someone's basement from flooding, we get the pumps to turn on as quickly as possible.
Yep.
So, but there is no lock system. Water's gonna, what we do need to do is make sure the village owns catch basins. We need to make sure we keep them clear. We encourage people to not put things over them, debris, leaves, Christmas trees. And then the conveyance system, over the course of the past 10 years, we've been steadily televising all those. And last year, we did prioritize replacing certain sections where we did find obstructions. And those areas over on Sagamore seem to fare real well. We put some berms down by Kensington, where Kensington meets the bottom of Avon. I didn't hear any issues of flooding there. I got a real positive call from someone today who had previously suffered a lot of damage on Locust, and we made some slight changes there with the pitch of the road when we repaved it. Anyway, and that was all real positive. So sorry about that.
Perfect.
But it just happens to be our annual meeting. Stephen knows we have our meeting with the DEC coming up next week, and our MS4 program is our requirements to comply with what we own, and that is our catch basins and conveyance system. But much of that does rely on educating all the residents and all the commercial property owners also of what their responsibilities are and some measures that they can help take to minimize it. And we will be following up with that group with the neighborhood up at Hamilton and Sussex, because obviously there was a significant amount of water during Ida, and it happened again. And it might very well be that we're going to, one remedy might be adding an additional conveyance pipe there, and that's something we'll come back to the board with and update the residents with.
Okay, just a quick question. If you do find that there's like sediment in the pipes, how would you clean that out? Would you blast it out? Or would somebody would go in there manually and just shovel it out?
So the velocity of an event like Sunday's event, that would get washed out. What does build up is sediment in the catch basins, and the village last year spent more than $100,000 to clear out the sediment that becomes caked right at the catch basin itself. But I can tell you we did. So the sediment doesn't build up in the pipe. Even the 72-inch line, we televised that line its entirety, and it's concrete, and it was in really amazingly good shape. Where the sediment builds up is at one of the collection gates, if you will, where you're trying to stop all the leaves and debris, and that's at the entrance to the school system. When we clean that out its entirety, and the school knows to check it on a regular basis. So the velocity of the water can push it out. But if we did find a significant chunk, we do have our jetter that we can use to absolutely push it out. Yeah, that new sewer jetter works for that too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we are going to move on.
You want to do the crosswalk results?
Pardon?
You want me to do the summary of the crosswalk results?
I think maybe do that down near, I thought we'd go to Maltby now.
Okay. Oh, you want to go to Mulberry?
Yeah,
Okay.
and, but that would be you too, because you were the point person on the, so Mary, perhaps,
Yep. So, as I've done for the last 7 months, I'd like to give an update on Mulberry Park. As you know, the village with the Friends of Maltby have been working on this public-private partnership to renovate the park. It's 2.7 acres of grass next to the village paddle courts down on Paxton. There's a strong desire in the town for another playground and also just to have a more welcoming green space that is a nice area to be able to add value for the village. So the village has committed $150,000, provided that the Friends of Maltby have collected $350,000 in cash, not just pledges, but in cash in-house. And so far, they've surpassed that. They've collected cash of $454,000 as of today, which is phenomenal. It was great, a great fundraising effort. But we still are obviously continuing to look at the park and the plantings, and if, a lot of people have asked is the fundraising closed, and the answer is no, it's still open. There's an easy tab on the village homepage to donate on the village website, and it's an exciting project. Many residents, as I've said, have asked if they can still be a part of it, and the answer is yes. And the monies received coming in, going forward, will be for further improvements in landscaping. So today, the trustees are going to be voting on 2 resolutions that include 3 things: for playground equipment, for benches, and for landscaping, fencing, and pavers. It's 3 different contractors. The equipment is $343,841 from Landscape Structures. The 11 benches plus some signage, I think it's mostly benches, is from Site Specialists of $20,917. And for landscaping, fencing, which is really important, we're going to put new fencing around the entire park, and pavers, is $204,000 from Tony Casal. And he was the low bidder on that and has done work with the village. And Jim and I met with the guy from Tony Casal, and he's done other work with us in the past. So timing remains late summer to early fall. And I think just in general, the responses to the renovation have been tremendous and very positive, and the fundraising efforts have been superb by the Friends of Maltby, and we give them a lot of credit for underwriting and supporting this park. So the trustees obviously are very thankful for that. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and we're going to go through the 2 resolutions.
Perfect. And Mary, I think you should move them both.
Okay.
Okay, and so as
Okay,
trustee
Jim,
Barron
yeah,
said,
you go ahead.
Right, so the first one is for awarding the playground equipment and the benches. And the reason this is done separately is because the playground equipment is on state contract,
Right.
and the benches are a sole source provider. So those 2 items were not included in the bid package that we put out. So again, you're simply authorizing the award of the purchase of the playground equipment with Landscape Structures for the $343,841, since that's on a state contract, and then also the purchase of the 11 benches for $20,917. These are the nice steel black benches that are the same ones that we have essentially in front of the post office, with a rectangular spot for the plaques that will be put on them.
Right, because people have been donating benches to the park.
Right.
So, and there's still benches to be donated if you wanted to do that.
It just says authorized purchase of benches. I assume that's purchase and installation of benches too?
You know what? Actually, to be cost effective, so as part of the bid package, they're going to build the patio and the footings for them, but the benches will just arrive on their own, and then DPW will fasten those benches. Of course, I got to explain that to Vic, but yes.
The DPW is also going to be taking down the old existing fence instead of
Yeah.
Casal. So we were trying to use the DPW when we
Save
can.
them money.
Yes.
So do you have a motion for that first
So,
one?
yes,
Sorry.
I'd like to move it.
And I'll second it.
Great, thank you, Mary.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Terrific work, Mary,
So
by
there-
you
there's-
and the
there's
team.
There's a second one as well. Jim, you want to go through
Yep,
that?
yes. And so the second one is the award of the bid number 2301. As Mary said, we had 2 bidders. Tony Casal was the low bidder. And this is for an amount of $204,000, which is, trustee Barron said, is for The other items, which is principally the hardscape improvements, we should emphasize the playground equipment, inclusive of the landscape structures, also includes the permeable surface material that the playground equipment is going to be on. But this bid is for the hardscape pavers that will go up to that, and also the hardscape structures that will just go underneath the benches, the fencing, and then, and also the landscaping. And what I emphasize here is that we identified these as alternates, and alternate one is using the pavers in lieu of the bluestone.
Yeah,
since
we
the
decided
bluestone-
not to do
The bluestone
bluestone.
came, but we're gonna
It's
have
very
a,
expensive.
but we're gonna have a beautiful paver that's
gonna
substantial in
be-
size. It's
yeah.
not the small little pavers that everyone thinks.
Right, and it's going to be porcelain, and it's going to be, it'll be really nice, but it just won't be bluestone.
And that was $204,000.
Yeah, ceramic, it's going to be a little cheaper.
All right, Mary, do you want to move that?
Yeah, so I would like to move this motion.
I'll second it.
Yep, thank you, Mayor.
All those in
All your
favor?
help on this.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. And then, Jim, do you want to, we're syncing up parking meter fees.
Yes, somewhat of housekeeping measures. So
Right.
yes, all we're changing here is the meters in Craft Avenue lot, those meters, some of those meters, not all of them, 140 meters that are currently at 50 cents an hour weekdays. Those will be going to $1 an hour, consistent with the other meters in the Craft Avenue lot. And then the merchant spaces, some 40 of those are going from 50 to 75 cents. And why is that? Those, the meters are currently at $1 on the weekends, but yes, during the week, those trackside meters were 50 cents an hour. However, what the village had done over the years was we increased the price of the commuter buyout, but we're not changing the price of the commuter buyout. So in the Craft Avenue lot, that will continue to be at the $1,250, at least for this year. So again, just adjusting the Craft Avenue meters weekdays for those that are currently not $1 an hour to $1 an hour, and then those 40 merchant spaces to the 75 cents an hour, and that will be consistent with the other lots for both the merchants. And then likewise for the Kensington, I should say for the Kensington garage, the resident rate's currently 75 cents. It will go to $1 an hour. But again, keep in mind, most of the spaces in the Kensington garage, resident spaces, are commuter spaces, and buyout spaces, and those rates are not changing.
How do these rates compare to some surrounding communities?
Very similar. Yeah, right, absolutely very similar. And again, remember, all these meters, we open up to the public after 3 p.m. So again, at $1 an hour, that's also consistent with the other spaces that are at the public rate in the lot at $1 an hour, and also
Yeah.
on-street at $1 an hour.
Right.
Yep.
We just had kind of some confusing,
Yeah,
people
I
would,
think this makes it,
makes it just uniform is exactly what it does.
I'll move it.
And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed, motion passes.
Okay, and the next item follows our discussions that we've had on, well, during the budget, during one of the budget work sessions, and also in our meetings with the dining consultants to have an equitable way to allocate our fees. So what's proposed is sidewalk seating, $250 application fee, plus $150 per seat. And I should emphasize, this is only applicable for restaurants, not carry-out food establishments. The carry-outs to food establishments would pay just the $250 application fee. And for the on-street dining, an application fee of $1,000, plus also the $150 per seat, plus the cost of the parking meter, the buyout of the parking meter, which would be $11 a day, which they've all been paying already.
I think it's important to mention that we did this in conjunction with a very great professional firm, because all of us, I have to say, felt like these are people's livelihoods. And there were some communities who just said, whatever you have out there now is just fine. And other communities, actually in Westchester, said, take it all in.
Yeah.
And we felt like we had to be fair to people who were, this is their livelihood. So we also have, in addition to, this helps limit the chair sprawl, for want of a better, because now you have to buy the chairs. You can't keep just adding random chairs. And we also have a checklist of sanitary neatness, garbage, aesthetics, so that when you see our new vision of outdoor dining, I think you're going to see a lot of improvements, both in its composition and frankly, its beauty and its cleanliness. And I think it was well worth to have people come in and help us out. And our merchants wanted that. They felt like they were treated fairly, that experts came in. It wasn't just a case of the 5 of us who have no background in a restaurant.
I think it's also to note that the merchants had a chance to come in and speak with the consultants at
A good
length,
point.
and
They were
came
in.
multiple times and
Yep.
had a chance to.
And the residents too.
And the
You know, people, public at large had a chance to give their opinion and their input.
Good.
And when that was important, we did a little survey. I believe it was something like 85-15 of people who wanted to see dining continued outdoor. They just wanted it to pick up its niceness a little bit. And
Are still working on
Further
modifications
enhancements,
that will
yes.
be.
Yeah, this is for this
come out.
season.
Yeah.
this is just for
yes.
the summer.
So what's
That's a
this-
good.
This 2023 season, is that, can you define those
I think it
dates?
starts like right now, right, Jim?
Right. It's underway now, and I believe the literature that went out is that, yeah, the existing program will end at the end of the year, at which time, sometime later in the season, the board will, make a determination on where to proceed with other changes.
Winter
with-
dining.
I just think maybe we should put the dates instead of 2023 season.
Yeah, so,
Know the dates.
I will make it consistent what we put in the application. I think it ends in November, and everything need to be removed by December. Yeah.
Perfect, yeah.
Right, and we should emphasize with this, so the process for this is, as of today, all the restaurant owners that were interested in participating had to submit their applications. Then later in the week, the chief and myself and the building inspector, by Friday, will go around and meet at the locations, determine how many tables and chairs the establishments can have, since, for example, we do require that 6-foot separation, which the code has always required a minimum of 5 feet. I don't know that everyone's adhered to it, but again, now, after we go through it with them, determine the layout and what they can have, they're going to submit an AutoCAD drawing that will be on file so that we can, enforce it. And again, that's for the 2023 season.
And
but
we're also going to get the seat
I will
count from
highlight,
that, yeah.
and it should be, May to November, with everything to be removed by December, unless the board decides otherwise,
But we're still considering the future.
Absolutely,
What the
yeah.
future looks like this is during the season as more study.
Right.
Exactly. This is the summer season rules. You're right.
This summer.
This summer.
Right.
Okay,
And we're going to see, it's going to evolve.
right. So with those changes, would anyone like to move it? In a second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, we have one more resolution, but I think prior to that, I asked trustee Barron's to do a little analysis of the survey that we sent out about a proposed crosswalk on Route 22. And because folks were asking kind of to get a thumbnail sketch of what came out of that
Right.
survey.
Thank you, Mayor. Yep. So as many folks are aware, as the mayor said, we've been having discussions on a crosswalk on Route 22, somewhere between Pondfield and Tanglewilde. The trustees had promised earlier on to have a survey that the residents most affected by this discussion could fill out. To that effect, we sent out a survey. crosswalk survey, over 700 households in the voting districts of District 16 and 17, and they were, that had signed up for the village email alert system. These districts are the closest in proximity to the crosswalks, or the potential crosswalk that we have discussed. The survey was distributed in April, and we had 284 households respond to the survey. The results of the survey are posted on the village website under the Vehicular and Pedestrian Initiatives. If you hadn't had a chance to look at it, it's there, and it's the whole survey is on the website. A few takeaways from the survey that the mayor asked me to highlight. Over 60%, or 164 households, support installing a new crosswalk, which includes the use of flashing beacons at some point between Pondfield and Tanglewild. On the question, if the crosswalk was to be installed, where would be the most sensible location? Over 43%, or 106 households, believe the most sensible location would be between Paddington and Dusenberry. And 30%, which is the next lower number, had no opinion on the location. 68%, or 193 households, responded that they are crossing Route 22 at some point during the week. The majority of households responded that a new crosswalk would have no effect on the number of times they currently crossed Route 22. 47, or 115 households were in favor of a new sidewalk, as is feasible on the east side of Route 22. Currently, there's no sidewalk over there, but 47%, or 115 households said they were in favor of a new sidewalk if it was feasible on the east side. And then we had 105 comments at the end of the survey, which the village found very helpful, and appreciate the residents taking the time to fill out the survey and to respond in a timely manner, and giving us great feedback on the survey and on the walkability in Bronxville.
Thank you.
Yep, so that's my report.
And then, Jim, do you want to go forward? It's a resolution authorizing funding to have an engineer collect some pedestrian data along the same route.
Right. So this, so you have a copy of a draft resolution that would authorize funding an amount not to exceed $20,000 to retain Collier Engineering to collect and to summarize pedestrian and vehicular data along Route 22 using cameras installed along the corridor. And in conjunction with that, we would receive a report which would outline the tasks taken, the findings, their evaluation, and recommendations, along with a conceptual plan identifying the measures deemed appropriate and for which an application to the state could be made for installation, if applicable.
Okay, and this is honestly, quite frankly, something this board promised to do in November after we did a survey, and we took a little halt just to gather more people's opinion.
Well, we also took a halt because we wanted to petition the state to see if we could make Route 22 25 miles an hour.
That's very important.
The current 30 miles an hour, and so it'd be in conjunction with the whole village.
Because we got rebuffed rather quickly on that one.
Which they rejected.
Yeah.
So I think we all thought it was important to, have a period of time where we collect objective data, over a certain amount of time, over a certain length of the road too. So we really get a chance to see at different times of day, over different periods of time, how many and where people are crossing. And none of this data is going to be perfect, but I think it's going to give us a stronger set of information to be able to really evaluate this more.
Yeah, I think we're all in agreement that this is the right and the prudent, and frankly, again, what I like about this board is we know what we don't know, and none of us are traffic engineers, and we need some help on this. So I think this is something we promised to go forward with, and
In fact, yeah, they will look at the data and they will provide an analysis of it. Again, something we couldn't do on our
we
own.
couldn't do on our own. Exactly. All right, so I will move this, and do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. All right, trustees, that was the end of our regular business. The next meeting is June 12. Trustees, anything we forgot before I open it to public comment? I think we're, Jim, did you say something about the time of the parade, though, that I,
Oh, no, so the only thing I was trying to clarify is, we start with the benediction, the events start sharp at 8:30, is what I was trying to say. We begin with the benediction, but then we will, the parade itself will kick off no later than 9 a.m. But just what happens in past years is even though we start at 8:30, people tend to, we just need to be really punctual and start the ceremony at 8:30 sharp so we can make sure we kick off the curbs no later than 9 a.m.
okay, I knew there was
That's all.
something you
Yeah,
wanted
yeah.
to.
And that's the Memorial Day parade.
But,
Exactly.
And so we want people to be there by 8:30. We want anyone who's participating to be there by 8 a.m. That's what Mary Ann and I are emphasizing, you know.
All right.
So, Mary,
Yeah.
I'd like to take a moment to thank you and for all the work you did with communicating with our local politicians, Amy Paulin, Shelley Mayer, about our concerns about the housing compact in the governor's budget.
Thank you.
You did a tremendous amount of work, day in, day out on that, and I think it was not being opposed to it, but just showing the dramatic shortcomings of it. So I really want to thank you, and on behalf of the entire village, I think that was going to have a very potentially negative effect on every community in New York State if New York State had the ability to override local zoning laws, and it could have a particularly bad impact on the village of Bronxville. Second thing I'd like to say is that the storms of 2 weekends ago really brought to light that we as a village board have to make this our really top priority and make sure that we, on all future decisions, are considering incremental monies spent to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to understand the flooding issues, stormwater issues, sanitary sewer issues in this village. This has to be our absolute #1 priority, both in terms of resources, our scarce resources here, and our scarce financial resources.
Well said. Trustees, I concur. Yeah. All right, then I will open it to anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment on any subject, and just ask if you would kindly adhere to the 3-minute rule, if you don't mind. And everyone is welcome to speak.
Oh, and to state your name and address.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Jonathan Kelton at 50 Elm Rock. Look, I'm here to talk about the crosswalk, and I don't want this to be contentious in any way. I would say, Mary, you left out some stats from, framing the narrative there. 2/3 of the people responded saying they use it 3 or less times a week. In aggregate, 25% of the people said they use it for school. And I think that was kind of the impetus and the catalyst for this. You did acknowledge that 60% said that they would not use it incrementally if a crosswalk was installed. So look, I understand the need for this for maybe some people, but it just seems like we're talking about financial scarcity, and it just seems like this is an allocation of funds for something of convenience and not necessity. And the folks that'll bear the cost are those that are in opposition to this. And so I think that's worth stating out loud. And none of this is personal, and none of this is because we're trying to make the lives of any of our neighbors more difficult. There's opposition to it because of aesthetic reasons, because of inconveniences it causes, because of financial and legal liabilities that are borne by those that are now going to have sidewalks running through their property. And it strikes me as odd that those that are going to bear the cost of this are uniformly in opposition to it. And yet, we continue to push forward with this in a very staunch manner. Look, I think there's some other points of consideration that merit discussion. It's serendipitous in a way that the chief of police is sitting here tonight, but through FOIL requests, we learned that he expressed that there's a false sense of security at crosswalks, and he was in opposition to a crosswalk that would be placed at Elm Rock and 22. So I don't want to speak for him, but this is just discovered via email traffic submitted through FOIL requests. Dave Parker from the state of New York, who's an engineer, Jim, I'm sure you know who I'm referencing here, he said this does not meet state requirements. This does not meet state requirements for flashing lights. It does not meet state requirements for shark teeth, whatever those things are, right? I don't know, I'm not a civil engineer, but I can tell you that I'm an investment banker. I frame numbers all the time for a living, and I think we're not painting a full picture here, and I think the community at large, when thinking about the allocation of funds, we've already spent $100,000 to put sidewalks in and pull them back out. We're going to spend $20,000 on data collection. We have decrepit sidewalks along the side of 22, the west side of 22 leading to Pondfield. We have sidewalks that run from 22 down into the town that are not usable for my wife when she's pushing the stroller. So there's a host of places where we could spend money that would deliver value, quote unquote value, for all of the residents, but we're very adamant about this one crosswalk. And so I just want to express, again, my concern here. I want to express my opposition to it. I want to say very clearly this is not a personal vendetta against anybody, but I think when painting a picture here, yes, some of those statistics suggest that this is overwhelmingly in support, but when someone sends a survey to you and you know that there are people that are seeking this, it's easy to say, yes, I support it. So when 60% or 2/3 of the respondents say, sure, I support it, you should also point out that 2/3 of the respondents said they would not incrementally use that location, a crosswalk at that location. They would not cross 22 any more often than they do today. 60% of the respondents also said they use it 3 or fewer times per week. This is not a highly trafficked area, and only 25% of the respondents said they use this for school. So I think those are also very important data points. Thank you.
Thank you.
The only thing I would say, and I so don't want, I appreciate your comments. I just want to make sure people know, because it's not incredibly intuitive, that every sidewalk in front of every home that currently exists is the responsibility of the homeowner. So we can't use village money to repair someone's sidewalk on Pondfield and 22 and then not repair someone's sidewalk on Kensington, because it's village code that you're in charge of your own sidewalk. And that's sort of the same way it is Scarsdale. It's, at least in Westchester, that's the way it is. So, anyone else?
Hi, everyone. Nate Weber from 33 Elm Rock. I would just like to support what John said, just so it's on the record, with respect to the views expressed by the New York Department of Transportation and the views expressed to them, or at least reported by them. Based on field review observations discussions, the village police chief was worried that the crosswalk may make people feel too safe. It was his belief that if you wait, you get a gap to cross and can cross without stepping in front of traffic, making them yield. All right, so that's from the FOIL request. So I wanted to say that is consistent with the view of those who are opposed to this project, right? We do feel that it's going to make people feel too safe. The other aspect, and I think John touched on this, that I'd just like to reiterate for everyone, and I'd like to use the mayor's own words, if I may. Less than 11 months ago, Mayor, you wrote this in your column. In the theme of walkability, we are spending $175,000 to construct a crosswalk. I was under the impression the state of New York was paying for that, but you said we are spending, to construct a crosswalk and new sidewalks in the area of Paddington Road and Dusenberry Road. This is a component of our new initiative called Safe Streets and has a goal to provide not only our students, but also our residents the safest possible routes from one side of the village to the other, with an emphasis on getting our youngsters to school. As was shown in the survey results, only 25% of the respondents said they would cross to go to school. It was the fifth most popular response for why you would use the sidewalk. So I'm still a little confused about why we would spend another $20,000 to continue to push a process that was supposed to be geared for students, but the survey results said it's not going to actually serve the students. While walking is certainly commendable, walking the dog is certainly commendable, it was not the express purpose of this crosswalk. It was not the express purpose of this project, right? And now it seems this project is expanding in scope. And finally, just to reiterate on this same column, Mayor, right? As part of our recent comprehensive plan and corresponding survey, the message we received from you as villagers was not to make great changes to the streetscape, rather update, repair, and preserve the infrastructure and streetscape. This was less than 11 months ago, and so I'm a little confused about what has changed, maybe why the project has expanded in scope, especially as, you know, the impetus for this project was always to help students, and is clearly not going to happen, and is going to make those streetscape changes that you wrote about in the column saying you did not want to make and the community does not want to see. And additionally, it doesn't repair any infrastructure, right? This is new infrastructure that itself is going to just maybe potentially eventually fall into disrepair and will not serve its long-term purpose. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And your two clarifications, I was incorrect using "we" because I also meant our grants from State Senator Shelley Mayer. So I meant we as a unit, and I should have been much more clear on that. That was a mistake. And the other, I would just disagree with you. People didn't want, for example, I will use the traffic circle that I live near. We most certainly updated it because people said update things, make them more walkable. So my traffic circle was not turned into, people kind of said, just make things better, update things. And so that was our effort on this. But my "we" was an incorrect use of "we."
Then let me, I know this is not a Q&A session,
Yes.
but 364 days ago, this same board approved $175,000 in capital bond issuance to construct a sidewalk on Elm Rock Road, right? I rewatched the village meeting yesterday. Mr. Palmer talked about it using the terms crosswalk. So I'm confused. You authorized $175,000 of a capital spending 364 days ago. You said we are spending, but the state of New York is spending that money?
Do you want to clarify, isn't that part of our grant money?
Right, we received $170,000 from Shelley Mayer. You also authorized additional monies to extend the sidewalk from Dusenberry up to South Road. I think that's,
And what would have been the cost of the sidewalk from Dusenberry to South Road? Because the number $100,000 was mentioned.
that section from Dusenberry to South, it was more than $100,000. I just know that but yes, Shelley Mayer's grant was $170,000, but I think the other stretch of sidewalk that you had approved was a little bit more than the initial bid. I'm gonna say closer to $200,000.
Okay, yeah, no, okay.
But between
Fair
Shelley
enough.
Mayer and what you approved was to cover the crosswalk, the sidewalk between Paddington and Dusenberry, and then Dusenberry up to South. Yeah.
Okay, so I used "we" incorrectly. It should have been state monies as well. Okay. Anyone else would like to make a comment on any topic?
Hello, I'm Maureen Hennessy, and I live at 49 Elm Rock Road. You've just voted to allow up to $20,000 for cameras for data. When will those be installed, and for what time frame will you be calculating or taking?
I think we want to keep some of that.
Well, we're trying to, we wanted to, because this is a public meeting and we have to do contracts, obviously in public when we spend money. And our conversation at our work session earlier was that we have to sit down with this expert and figure out what times of day are optimal, how much time gives very fair and defensible data. Wouldn't you say that's correct? And of course, we want to make sure that that the cameras are put up, but folks perhaps don't know when they're working, so there would be no effort to perhaps walk more on Tuesday than Wednesdays. So that's, now that we've engaged, to answer your question in short term, now that we've engaged the professional, we're going to sit with him and his team and figure out.
But hopefully in the coming weeks, though.
Oh, right now, yeah.
Between the coming weeks and
I
the end of
think it
June.
would be as soon as possible, so probably, I doubt
Okay,
he's gonna be able
so
to-
these cameras will not be used in November, December, January?
No, they will be.
And you think that is a fair assessment of the usage of people crossing the street over the course of a school year?
We don't know, which is why we employed, if the professional tells us otherwise, we'll do otherwise. None of us are knowledgeable on what kind of algorithm you need for the cameras, so now we have.
No, nor am I.
Yeah.
But one might say that more people will be walking to school in the month of June than they would in January. I don't think any of us need a degree to.
Right, but I'm sure there's probably a balancing or an averaging. I mean, I'm just guessing how this gentleman does it in large cities at different times of
We
years.
won't assume that will be through the whole year.
Right, no assumptions will be made, and we'll just kind of take the guidance from his company on how you balance the spring months, to your point, versus the months with blizzards, and, I mean, you're absolutely right.
And my second question, I guess, is, if I understood Jim right, the cost, more or less, from Duesenberry to South Road for a sidewalk would be around $200,000, is that what you said, Jim? Must have made, close.
Approximately, yeah.
Because the survey went to 2 districts within the village, but all taxpayers would be paying for that. So is it prudent that only one little group was asked of that and not all village taxpayers?
Well,
Seems like a lot of money for a sidewalk, where we just, I was at the last meeting a couple of weeks ago, it was like a Monday morning, I think,
right.
and the chief spoke a lot about overtime and budgeting for police officers, and that the downtown has gotten that much busier. Big concern. I would think that we could probably use some more security at the school. I don't have children at the school anymore, a new empty nester, but I would think that just in light of what goes on in the world, that would be another big concern. And we're talking about spending $200,000 on a sidewalk that's, I don't even know how many feet it is from Duesenberry to South Road. It's just, I think you really need to think this through. And if I were a taxpayer, and I know a lot of people do not know what's going on with this crosswalk, I have friends who are like, yeah, what's going on with that? I think you really need to educate everyone on that and just not survey. And I know that gentleman over here was the one in charge of we need to fix it, because a lot of people in the district didn't receive the survey. We had to send it to people who didn't get it. So there's a lot of flaws, I think, to the survey, how it was collected, and who was asked. Because I tell you, if if it was going on up on the hilltop and living on Elm Rock Road, I'd want to know where my money's going. If I was a widow that lived in Midland Gardens on a fixed income, and you're spending $200,000 on a piece of sidewalk, I'd want to know about that. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I appreciate your comments. I guess it's important that we can't, by the nature of our job, just like the school doesn't survey everyone to see if we should teach French, and we didn't survey the people in my district over by the traffic circle to say, would you allow us to spend money to make the traffic circle safer? We don't poll the whole community to say we want to upgrade pipes on Kensington Road. Part of our job is sort of to make the global decisions, and unfortunately, just like the school, we can't send out plebiscites on, whereas, sometimes we spend a lot more money on flooding near the women's club than in another neighborhood, but the idea that we're 1 square mile, the idea is that it helps everybody in the long run, and I can't imagine ever getting to a point where we have to check with the people on the hilltop if it's okay to fix Parkway Road. And I think it's also important for people to understand that we're down to 15 cents on the dollar in the village goes to village government. So we pair, for example, Scarsdale, it's 33% to Scarsdale village government versus the Scarsdale school. And if you read things, that's rather optimal, and we're down at a level where trying to do flooding on 15 cents on the dollar is pretty tough. So, I mean, our job is to look at things more globally and frankly, hope that people think what's good for one might be good for all, since we're just 1 square mile. And for example, we have spent a lot more money on flooding in some neighborhoods than others, but I think people realize that we're doing our best to get to everybody's priorities, so.
The only thing I would like to say is, in terms of the communication sent into those districts, it is a good time to remind everyone, we do put it on the website, that we can only, yes, we sent the survey out to the 16 and 17. We worked with our GIS mapping application to use the addresses that people put in. So anyone, again, just to plead to get village email alerts, we just urge everyone to sign up for the email systems which are on the village website. We can't, if someone's information is not in there, we can't send it to them. They need to sign up and subscribe to the village's email system. But in this case, yes, we used our GIS system, and if they were plugged in and had signed up for it, we could send it to them. So we put that in every newsletter. We did also put the survey out on the website, but we need a cell phone number to be able to send someone a text to be able to.
And honestly, I can say in good conscience, between all of us, Mary in particular, I think we have asked at least 20 times for people to sign up for the alerts, and some folk.
And our newsletter.
And our
It came out
newsletter.
today. If you didn't get it, please.
The newsletter was today, so
We'll have
sometimes there's a responsibility to participate in your government. Okay, anyone? Oh, yes, sorry, I didn't look that way. Hello.
Hi, my name is Liana Wartell. I live at 6 Greenfield. I have nothing against crosswalks, but I do have a problem when there's no research done in other communities where we have these crosswalks and there are accidents. And I think it was Scarsdale News that reported back in December 2 people getting hit because it's a false sense of security. People think that once they walk into the street and their lights are flashing, that it's safe. So I think Bronxville needs to do other research rather than just within the community. My second point is with the sidewalks. Residents are now responsible for these sidewalks, right, that you install?
They have been for 50 years, maybe. I mean, this is not something that's new in any way.
But you'll be installing new sidewalks for homeowners?
Well, if a crosswalk goes up, the state of New York requires, and correct me so I say this correctly, a certain amount of sidewalks near a crosswalk. So you can't put that burden on the homeowner. We would have to put in we would have to put in the sidewalk that the state of New York require.
So if someone falls on that sidewalk, who's responsible?
Well, that's actually, we've asked, I've put a question into the state legal counsel because I had that same question, as if we were the purveyor person who instructed it. So I have a call in on exactly that
I
question.
think residents need to know that, and I think that has to be in the survey, because it's very easy for people to say, you know, sidewalks are great, let's put them in, but ultimately, if homeowners are responsible, that's a big liability.
Mm-hmm.
Just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Very mindful of the 3-minute limit. So my name is Andrew Langhoff. I want to thank you all for hiring an expert to look into the crosswalk issue. I've heard the other speakers, but I would defer to the results of the survey for anyone who would like to look at them. I think it's beyond dispute that a vast majority of the folks who took that survey, who are in the affected area, want a crosswalk and would prefer a crosswalk to be at Elm Rock. I've heard the objections. If one of the objections is that these crosswalks are too expensive, as has been explained, this money is coming for the most part from the state and from the county. If there's a concern that the crosswalks are not safe, I would certainly defer to our experts, but it seems counterintuitive to me that a crosswalk wouldn't help with safety with respect to one of the most dangerous roads we have in the village. If there's concern that homeowners are responsible for sidewalks, as you pointed out, it's been that way for half a century, if not forever, in this village. And if there's a concern that people aren't going to use the crosswalk, I think there's plenty of evidence in the survey that lots of people will use the crosswalk. If you do those numbers, I think they vastly exceed whatever the state or federal standard that's required to put a crosswalk in. So with those things in mind, this crosswalk has been discussed now for, I believe, almost 2.5 years. I would just advocate for some kind of decision soon. I think we can have this conversation at every trustee meeting from now until the end of time. I'd like to suggest that we work with this expert to find out what we need to do and where we need to do it, and that we try to get something in place for the next school year. I'd like to think that by September, we could be spending the money and not ripping up the sidewalk that we put in, but actually putting something in that makes it safer for folks who live across 22 to walk to school. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Yes.
My name's Chip Spear. I live on 43 Park Avenue. And I just want to stress that we look at the overall goal of what we're trying to achieve here. You know, we've got a town that is not strictly a driving town. We stress walkability. We really stress that kids walk to school. There are no school buses to take kids to school every day and to take them home. We've got a state highway that's running up and down our town on Route 22 with no real safe way to get across for many families and many people and many kids. So for more than a few years, there have been people on what I refer to the other side of Route 22 that have been trying to get a crosswalk to have a safe way to get across that street. We've heard objections that a crosswalk gives a false sense of security. I would counter that if that was actually the case, then remove all crosswalks all over the town To me, that seems to be a little bit ridiculous, I will say. That crosswalks are meant and designed to be safe for people, and that there are ways to do that to enhance safety for anybody who's crossing. I think that we can do this so that we can meet state requirements for how people cross, how those crosswalks operate, and we can do so in a way which is fiscally responsible, and that we can implement it within a very timely manner. Hopefully, we can get this implemented by the fall, and that the consultant will come in, be able to do his analysis, come in and make a report, and we can implement the necessary steps to get that all constructed. So with that, I want to thank you very much for allocating the money to get the consultant in to finish doing the surveys and getting the necessary statistics to support what the surveys have shown and what we need in this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, trustees, anything that we skipped? No? All right, then I am motion to close our meeting and reconvene June 12th. Robert moved it. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes.